This past week, 2 statues of historic female icons were unveiled at the Alabama State Capitol: Helen Keller and Rosa Parks. The image of Miss Parks is exactly what we'd imagine. She's sitting down, resolute, resistant. December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks refuses to give up her seat on a Montgomery bus. We're told that a tired seamstress spontaneously said no. And her single act of courage sparked the civil rights movement. It's a beautiful story. It's also incomplete. Rosa Parks wasn't just tired from work that day. She was tired of injustice, and she was prepared for that moment. The previous summer, she'd studied nonviolent resistance at the Highland Folk School. She'd served as secretary of the Montgomery NAACP for over a decade and investigated racial violence across Alabama. Behind her were organizers who'd been laying the groundwork for years. The Women's Political Council had already drafted plans for a bus boycott, waiting for the right spark of Reformation. Black communities had been documenting discrimination, preparing legal cases, building networks of support. 9 months before Rosa Parks, a 15-year-old named Claudette Colvin had refused to give up her seat, but organizers decided she shouldn't be the face of the movement. Rosa Parks wasn't chosen because her courage was greater. The moment and the groundwork had aligned. And the bus boycott that followed, 381 days long. Not one dramatic day, but 381 ordinary days of carpools that had been planned, tired feet, financial strain, and the unglamorous work of persistence. I think my favorite backstage person in the story might be a young woman named Joanne Robinson. That night, after Rosa Parks stayed on the bus, she snuck into the university to mimeograph 35,000 flyers to distribute across the city. The boycott probably would not have happened without Joanne. Sometimes revolution depends on someone running the copier all night long. We each have our bit part to play. We romanticize the Rosa Parks moment because we want Reformation to be dramatic. We want to believe that one courageous act, one prophetic sermon, one 7 million person protest will change everything. But Reformation, whether in society or in the church, is slow, collective, hard, tiring, tenacious, and mostly behind the scenes work. October 31st, 1517, the monk and teacher, young Martin Luther, nails his 95 Theses to the church door, and the Protestant Reformation explodes into being. Except historians aren't sure the nailing ever happened. Luther never mentioned it. The first account actually appeared 30 years later. The first image of Luther with a hammer, 1697, almost 2 centuries after the fact. And even if it did happen, the cathedral door was the community bulletin board, and Luther was likely posting his grievances against indulgences being sold by the church he posted it in order to generate debate, because he was a passionate teacher and doing what passionate teachers do. The real Reformation started before Luther. There were decades of reformers before him and centuries of reform that came after him. It took translators and a printing press and teachers and ordinary people reading the scripture text in their own languages. We love the hammer and nails image of Luther because we want transformation to be exciting, big, decisive, and ideally with a hero. But that's not how deep, real, lasting change happens. Lasting change happens, that is, reform happens, when each of us does our bit part, faithfully committing to the journey of change step by step, day in and day out, with love and good spirit and generous hearts. In today's story, Jesus tells a parable about two men who go into the temple to pray. One stands tall, confident, listing his credentials like a spiritual hero. I fast twice a week, I tithe. I'm not like those other people, thieves, scoundrels, adulterers. Certainly not like that tax collector over there. This guy, he's done the work. He has the receipts to prove it. By every measurable standard, he's winning at righteousness. And the other man, however, can't lift up his head. He beats his chest and he stammers, "God, be merciful to me. I'm a sinner." And Jesus says, that man, the one with nothing to show for himself, goes home justified. So let's be honest, it's not our instinct, it's certainly not mine, to first identify with the self-righteous man, right? We think, thank goodness I'm not like that Pharisee. But notice what just happened. As soon as we judge the Pharisee for being judgmental, we become him. Jesus is so clever. Jesus is saying everyone has their own moral code for righteousness, knowingly or unknowingly, consciously or unconsciously. Thank God we recycle. Thank God we drive hybrids or EVs. Thank God we shop locally and only eat organic. Thank God we use the right language around gender and read the right books and vote the right way. And we want others to know we do. Presbyterians love words. We write statements. We sign petitions. We publish letters. We adore a well-written position paper, right? And there's nothing wrong with any of those actions. We can't help ourselves. We really can't. These are our convictions being lived out. But when we start thanking God that we're on the right side of history, that we're not like those people, we've entirely lost the storyline. As soon as we think we've figured out righteousness, we've taken the role of the proud Pharisee standing upright, or so he thinks. The Protestant reformers preached Ecclesia Semper Reformanda, the church reformed and always being reformed. Always being reformed. The Reformation wasn't about getting it right once and for all. It was about remembering what the second man in the parable models for us: humility, grace and mercy, and asking hard questions of ourselves, holding up the mirror occasionally and being honest. Justice and peace should bring us and the world joy. We don't often equate those. Paul writes in Philippians, "I am confident of this, that the one who began a good work among you will bring it to completion." Notice the tense, will bring, not has brought, not might bring someday when you get your act together. Will bring, as in God is still working, still forming, still reforming. And later in the same letter, Paul admits, not that I've already obtained this or reached the goal, but I press on, forgetting what lies behind and straining toward what lies ahead. This is God's apostle. God's apostle himself saying, I haven't arrived. I'm stumbling forward, not marching confidently toward justice, but stumbling, tripping, course-correcting, recalibrating, and sometimes falling flat. We all fall short of our best ideals and our best selves. We speak over voices we honestly meant to amplify, discover hidden biases we thought we'd outgrown, commit the very microaggressions we love to call out in other people. But the amazing grace of God abounds because we all stumble. And stumbling doesn't disqualify us from the race. It's the condition in which grace meets us. We don't wait until we are perfectly reformed. We keep doing the hard work of living out our convictions, trusting that God's mercy both covers our missteps and calls us to learn from them and do it again. The Pharisee stands tall, confident he's crossed the finish line of righteousness. But his righteousness, his self-righteousness, is his undoing. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer once said, "The gospel is hard for the pious to understand because it confronts us with the truth. You are a sinner and a desperate sinner. Now come, as the sinner you are, to the God who loves you utterly." It's hard for the pious, conservative, progressive, moderates, to grasp that our very best principles and values can become idols. Our very best principles and values can become idols. That our most righteous convictions can block real relationship with God and with one another. In fact, our very goodness can keep us from allowing God's grace in. The church reformed and always reforming isn't about becoming perfect. It's about acknowledging that our brokenness is the place where God's grace enters and transforms us. So what does unglamorous Reformation look like? It looks like, at least around here, participating in the umpteenth meeting about church security and safety. Can I get an amen back there? Yeah. It looks like a Bible study, wrestling with difficult texts. It looks like awkward conversations about race and gender and politics in church fellowship halls or around supper tables. It looks like people who've been at justice work for decades, long before it was cool. It looks like that moment when someone points out your blind spot and everything in you wants to defend yourself, but instead you take a breath and you say, tell me more. It looks like examining your church budget line by line, asking, where are we complicit in systems of harm? Unglamorous Reformation looks like giving generously from our abundance in order to equip God's work in the world, the good news of the gospel. It looks like 381 days of carpools and tired feet and potlucks and prayer circles and stuffing envelopes, like organizers quietly holding a community together when progress feels too slow. That's what faithful Reformation looks like. Gentle, patient, cooperative, generous. This is not glamorous work. We're called to be faithful in the unglamorous work of transformation, for God is the one, not us, growing something from one degree of glory to another. Reformation happens in a slow march together. There are no freeze-frame moments that change everything. There is only today's faithfulness. There is only determining the work that is yours to do, then doing it, and doing it again. Friends, may God protect us from our very best selves and our very best values. And may we trust that the one who began this good work in us, through us, and despite us, will bring it to completion. May it be so. Amen.